Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, JoyPad, where we are going through and talking about gaming news and gaming things that we love and maybe don't love. With me today is Mike Pinto and Tom Gerhardt. I am Mike Fleming. We are missing Megan today, but that's all right. We'll have some good topics to discuss. First thing we always discuss is what are we playing? So Tom, what are you playing right now that might be interesting for the fans?
So one thing I played this weekend, which I'm looking forward to playing more of as is made possible, was the Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PlayStation 4. It's been interesting. It's been different. I find the active button smashy combat kind of thingamajig both interesting, different, and maybe a little bit clunky. It feels like a game that wanted to go full Mass Effect and didn't go full Mass Effect to me. So I'll be interested to see how it feels as a larger experience, since what was available was, I don't know, roughly 10 minutes of gameplay maybe, and a bunch of cutscenes, which were good. I really enjoyed the dialogue. The fact that a lot of it was changed from what it was in the original game, so I was very pleased with that. And I've also been playing some of Infamous Second Son, which is a game from, I believe, 2015, 2014. It's an older game, but very fun and open world sandboxy enough that blowing up oppressive state super troopers is plentiful and enjoyable. So I'll leave it at that and pass it along.
Yeah, personally, I've been playing mostly with you guys actually this past week, but the game I've been playing, I've been playing 2 games alone, but the games I've still been playing, I'm working my way through XCOM 2. I actually just had a terrible situation happen last night after we played Stardew Valley. I was trying to evac my team and a scientist as part of one of the missions, and we're trying to go up, and 3 of my people were on the top floor but hadn't quite hit evac point. And I was like, oh, there's only one guy left. He might hit one of my guys, but no one was super weak. No, he could throw a grenade up there. And he threw a grenade on top of the roof, and they all fell plummeting to their deaths. So I lost 3 of my major characters in one game, in one moment. And that game has permadeath for those that haven't played it, unless you kind of do what's called saves coming and you load back. And I really wanted to do that, but I was like, you know what? No, I have to give myself a challenge, and I thoroughly regret it now because I have no one left in my, well, not no one, but I only have one person left in my A team, so I'm getting my butt kicked. I've had to abandon missions and stuff like that, so that was incredibly disappointing. But then otherwise, yeah, just playing with you guys mostly, so you kind of know, but we've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley, still loving that game. Well, on our 3rd year at this point, and looking like we're going to be wrapping up probably the current scenario. I think you guys would probably agree. By the end of this season, or this year rather, in Stardew Valley, maybe start over again. Always fun to play those games where, you can have a different story every time. But that's what I've been doing. And I have been playing a little bit of Payday 2 still. It's always a good chill game to do. I've been running through every stealth mission. I got through a couple more of the stealth missions, basically going through all of them. Trying to avoid using any items or anything in those, but there's a couple of missions you have to, so I haven't done them all perfectly, but not getting seen or anything in a bunch of them, so that's been a lot of fun too. Mike Pinto, what are you playing right now?
So I've been playing Stardew Valley with you guys, but under the current state of things where everyone's forced to stay at home, some of my other friends have also discovered the joy of multiplayer Stardew Valley. So I've got like 4 farms going right now, all with different people, and also my own solo farm. So a lot of Stardew Valley, mostly multiplayer though. On my own time, I've been playing Breath of Fire 2 for the Super Nintendo. It's my first time ever playing it, and I have to say, old RPGs are much harder, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think.
I would completely agree with that.
I've also just recently finished the Dead Space series, Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2. Great games. Sucks they never made a Dead Space 3. Gosh. Yes, guys, I know they made a Dead Space 3, but by all reports, it's terrible. So I don't want to talk about it.
Didn't happen.
And then I've also And I'm sorry, guys. I'm unemployed, so I play a lot of games. I just started playing The Misadventures of Tronbon, which is a 1999 PlayStation 1 game, the prequel to Mega Man Legends 1, even though it came out after Mega Man Legends.
So I like how you said Mega Man Legends 1, implying that there's a Mega Man Legends 2. And
There is a Mega Man Legends 2. But, you know what there's not? A Mega Man Legends 3. Even though Mega Man Legends 2 ends on, like, a total cliffhanger.
Why do I not remember Mega Man Legends 2? I thought there was never a sequel to Mega Man Legends.
There's a Mega Man Legends 2. And here's the fun thing. By the time this comes out, we're recording all this stuff in the past and kind of building up a buffer. I have a YouTube channel, which is conveniently named JoyPad, where this podcast will be, and where I think currently I'm putting up gaming videos, but I think eventually all of us should be. Misadventures of Trombone is going to start going up there soon, and Breath of Fire 2 is up there right now, and those are mostly what I've been playing. I also just started playing Final Fantasy X again, but I don't think I'm going to stick with it because, man, Tidus is irritating.
Ooh.
I would agree with that, yeah.
All right. I am a staunch defender of Final Fantasy X. Am I a defender of Tidus and his annoying laugh? No.
No, that's kind of where I'm at. It's just I'm having trouble getting to the beginning of the game. If I can get through the beginning, I'll keep on keeping on.
Speaking of, I just want to mention that I've also had thoughts of playing/replaying that game because I have played that game, and I have played that game to the point where I had the ability to one-shot the hardest boss in the game, which is a thing that I did.
Oh my god.
But
that's a lot of playing.
When you
That is a lot of playing.
When you get that chocobo race down to 0 seconds, that feeling of satisfaction that comes after hours and hours of controller breaking frustration basically leads to you being able to use Tidus's limit break on the ultimate weapon and murder his face. But I've given consideration to replaying that game or replaying Final Fantasy X-2, which is the companion game.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Story for Final Fantasy X-2, terrible. Awful. Just one of the worst things. But class system for Final Fantasy X-2,
surprisingly robust.
Fantastic. I want more Final Fantasy games that do that in a modern day and age. So yeah, I mean, and I'm not expecting it from Final Fantasy VII Remake, but
yeah.
I don't know what Final Fantasy 16 is going to be. Work that class system, Square Enix.
Well, when I hear class systems in Final Fantasy, I immediately jump to Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the greatest games ever.
Or Final Fantasy V, but
yeah.
Final Fantasy V is the same case as Final Fantasy X-2, except it doesn't have the same sort of like, oh, this was built on a game that was actually pretty good, and we just used the same world but made it about pretty princess dress up instead. Final Fantasy V is just based on a world of Super Generia, where your biggest enemy is a tree.
That's right. X-Death. Was that X-Death? Yeah, he was.
That was X-Death. X-Death was a tree. Exeth was a tree, Ferris was not a man, and Galif was a moon dude who died, and then his daughter immediately gained all of his power.
Very nice.
This has been the Final Fantasy Corner.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I've kind of shied away once you hit 10 from Final Fantasies, because I think, was 11 the first one where you had to, like, pay for it? Was that one, or was it 12?
It was an MMO.
Yeah, I remember that. And that's when I got turned off to the whole Final Fantasy series. I probably should play some of the newer ones, but
well, they were all...
That's the last one I remember.
The frustrating thing is 11, it was all kind of downhill from 11, and 11 was such a different experience that you almost didn't want it to really be considered a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, exactly.
I personally, my favorite recent Final Fantasy, however, is Final Fantasy XIV, which is the second MMO. Which somehow, once you get past some of the not-so-good story elements, has a pretty darn good story. And I'll talk about that one time out on here.
You know what just came to me, too? Sorry. And this is not necessarily exactly a game, but it relates. Do you guys remember Final Fantasy the movie?
The Spirits Within?
Yes, the Spirits Within. That just came to me as we were talking about this. Oh man, sorry, what a throwback. That movie was not very good.
No.
It was a really bad movie.
I'm pretty sure Alec Baldwin did one of the voices, if I remember correctly.
I have not seen that movie in a long time.
Final Fantasy The Spirits Within was basically saying, hey, we've got a name, and we've got people that can make cutting edge graphics.
Yep.
For the time.
Let's make for the time. Everything's for the time. But they were basically saying, well, let's see if we just make like a really long 3D movie and we'll throw some voice acting behind it, and the voice acting and story were not very good.
Yeah. Oh man. Sorry, I have like such like nostalgia kind of going, and I'm like, "Ooh, man, that game or that movie."
If you want to talk about Final Fantasy movies, there's also a thing called Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
I do remember that too.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But it's better than The Spirits Within.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, that's like saying a 4-star.
It's not exactly the hottest of takes.
It's
like a lukewarm take.
Let's play a game. I wish that this could be a recurring segment, because it almost could be. Pinto, tell me one thing you remember about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
The beginning? No, never mind. That's the beginning of Dirge of Cerberus, not Advent Children.
No, I can't tell you a single thing about Advent Children anymore. I remember when it came out, and the thing I remember about that it came out around the same time that Zanga, if anyone remembers that, was popular. Ooh. I'm pretty sure it was right around the same time, because I think I even found one of those, if you could change your Zangas to be different things.
I do remember something.
Oh.
They made Kate Sit Scottish.
I do not remember that.
I don't remember that.
I'm pleased that you did, though, because that is such a strange trivia piece.
What was Kate Sit in Final Fantasy Advent Children?
I think he only had like 1 or 2 lines in the entire game or movie. So
was he still the big fluffy robot?
No, it was just the little cat that sits on top of the robot.
Why was the cat even there?
I don't recall. It's been many years since I've seen that movie.
So, all right, here's the one, maybe 2 things I remember about that movie. I thought I had 2.
Nothing.
I thought I had 2.
Yeah,
no, I do have 2. The bad guy, and then in parentheses, I'm gonna put an S with a question mark, were like descendants of Sephiroth.
Yes, that's true.
Were very, very into Sephiroth. But I don't remember anything about them.
They were Sephiroth fanboys, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Final Fantasy VII fandom.
But they were somehow genetically related to him. And then the other thing I remember is that at the end, like the final attack that Cloud did, involved all of the characters jumping in the air and boosting each other up further in the air, Dragon Ball Z style. Until Cloud was like 9 miles straight in the air with a giant sword over his head to, I think, attack some manner of Sephiroth thing. That's it. That's all I remember. Just because it was so strange. Like, even for a game like Final Fantasy, to have like this weird anime Yuffie is 5 miles in the air using her powers to boost Cloud further up in the air in an air hand ladder. It's so weird.
They're trying to be cheerleaders.
Maybe we should do like a Riff Tracks edition of our podcast where we watch Advent Children together.
Oh my god. Where we're all just going, what is this? Constantly.
So we got some topics to talk about. I wanna keep us moving.
None of those were our official topics.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the normal for what are you playing. It kind of goes on to a topic, and Final Fantasy was our topic. So anyway, new topic that we wanted to talk about. We didn't get to my topic last week, and I thought it was going to lead to a rather large discussion about loot boxes and whether they are good or bad. And I personally am on the side, and I wanted to have some moment to explain that they are a good thing. And I want to caveat that quickly by saying there are a couple situations where I don't think they're good. For example, if you guys remember in the Star Wars one where you had the most recent Star Wars where you had to pay basically to utilize Darth Vader, for example. I think Luke Skywalker was another one you had to pay for. Well, that was a Battlefield, right? Was that the Battlefield Star Wars? Yeah. That is not a good design of a loot box. A loot box should be more cosmetic and should support the game developers to continue to enhance the game, but not cost money. So, for example, if you take something like Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike has been around for many years, and what they've been doing to keep kind of tweaking the game, implementing new maps, trying new things, and also just supporting in the competitive world community is release loot boxes that are completely cosmetic. They don't make you faster, make you better, unless you're in the community and you're joking about that. But in reality, they don't do anything for you. But there's hundreds of dollars being traded back and forth. Each loot box costs like $250. I think that's a great place for loot boxes to be because I think they bring out extra stuff for the community, and they kind of keep the game developer going and enhancing things. So I don't know if you guys disagree that loot boxes are bad, and maybe you have other situations where they've kind of turned out bad for games or for the communities around the games, but personally I've found them always to be, not always, almost all the time to be beneficial rather than, a disadvantage for the community of gamers that are around that game.
So I find loot boxes to be very situational. As long as they're kept cosmetic in the way that you've described it, I don't really have much of an issue with it. So, for example, Overwatch is a game I've played a lot of, which pretty prominently features loot boxes. It features seasonal loot boxes, which are even more of a controversial topic, I think, because it's not something that's permanently available. And I feel like whenever you make something limited time, there's a little gear that goes off in people's heads. They go, ooh, if I want that, I have to get it now. Now. But, everything that's available in that game, none of it makes you better at the core mechanics of the game. And I think that's important because there are plenty of other games, particularly in mobile gaming, where content, characters, items, weapons are locked behind loot boxes. Yeah. Where you'll get, normally you'll get a set amount of freemium currency on a regular basis, but the loot boxes are normally priced at such a point that you can only afford one at a, relatively rare interval unless you make a cash spend.
Yeah.
And the cash spend is normally very high in those games. Which I find that to be a negative of the experience, where I would rather see something like, if you're going to force a cash spend like that, make it cheaper and make your, new items available more frequently maybe, or, new, shiny brick of the week available more frequently, or make it so that, and this is my big pet peeve with loot boxes, make it so that people can directly buy the content that they want instead of gambling on it. And I understand why developers want to use the gambling mechanic and why they do use the gambling mechanic, because people like to gamble. And people will spend more money if they gamble than if they can just directly buy the piece of content that they want. There have actually already been countries, I think the first one was Belgium, if I remember right, that have outlawed
the Danish kind of countries.
That they've outlawed loot boxes, and there are some games that have just said, hey, we're just gonna pull out, like, we can't support this, we don't want to make the modifications to our game to not do this. And a lot of that's self-serving, I think, because they don't want to send the message that, okay, if your country tells us to turn this off, we'll turn this off, and then you can have the loot box free experience.
Well, you can also bypass that too, though, Tom. Like, in the sense that we all know that gamers are pretty savvy, right? And they can figure stuff out. VPNs have become very popular around the world, and I'm pretty sure that if you are in somewhere like Belgium, you mentioned, and if that's the case, you could just say, oh no, I'm connecting to a VPN in France. Your experience is almost exactly the same, and suddenly you're allowed to get that. So, like, I don't think it's going to go away, because you're never going to have Cayman Islands or the Bahamas or something like that. Every game developer is going to say that's where our game is. Just VPN in, and then you can do it. So gotta be careful with that.
I think though, like the developers don't really want to send a message to the country that they're going to just comply. They want to be able to maintain that mechanic because it's a profitable mechanic.
It is. Oh, it absolutely is.
I think I think there's a bigger issue with the gambling aspect of it. All of us are old enough that we grew up in the wholesome era where you bought a game, the game had all the content, you played the game. There weren't even really patches on the internet for the most part.
Yeah. Or DLCs.
Except for the PC games.
Like,
yeah. DLCs. Games had expansion packs like StarCraft Brood War. None of those things required you to take a risk that you would not get the thing that you want. And that is my biggest pet peeve with a loot box, because if I want something and I'm spending money to get it, I want to know that I'm going to get it.
Well, so... Yeah, I get that. That's why, I mentioned Counter-Strike, and there might be other examples too. The games need to have a way for you to buy that specific thing. So in Counter-Strike, if you're looking for a certain skin for a knife, for example, most people wanted a knife skin beyond the default. If you want that, knives are very expensive in that game. I think the cheapest one you can get is like $50, if you were to actually go buy one. So, you could open dozens of cases that cost, I think, $250 now each. That's at least the last time I looked, $250 each, and you're not getting that knife. Or you could just say, okay, I want that knife really badly. I play this game for hours on end every single night often. I want to have that specific knife. It's $100, and you can get that. So from my perspective, that's completely fine, and you should offer that. The reason I generally am on the side of loot boxes are valuable, they bring down the cost in games significantly. So, like, you mentioned Overwatch. I bet you if loot boxes weren't allowed to exist, if, skins and mod customization like things weren't allowed to exist, that game could easily be $100, to buy outright, if not a little more, because the game developers are spending so much to develop them, and they're relying on those loot boxes. So the benefit is that you say to me, hey, Mike, go play Overwatch. And I'm like, I don't really like that kind of FPS. I like more of a competitive, not a Team Fortress-like game, a class-like game. I like just a simple shooter where everybody has the same degree of all the skill in the game, rather, is on the player themselves, not on the character that they are. But you said, hey, it's like $15 right now. It was on a sale or something, $20 right now. You don't have to spend any money to get pretty much everything in the game. You just have to go in and play the game. So if otherwise, that game could have been $100. And I'm like, I'm not risking my hard-earned money to get that, because games with all the digital versions, you can't return them really anymore. So personally, I think that a game developer can say, hey, here's my game, $20, or potentially even free. There's a lot of games that are completely free, like War Thunder, completely free to get. And then you can
Fortnite.
try and play those games. Yeah, Fortnite. That's a perfect example. You can play the game absolutely free. And then, the skins are what keep the developer going. So I don't know if you guys think that that's been very beneficial for the gaming community, or you think still that it's led to more problems than it's been worth.
You touched on one thing that I like, which is a player marketplace for the items. And I feel like games that do that, it's softer in those cases, right? So you've opened the item, you've acquired the item, and now you have the option to sell it either for in-game currency or some sort of real-world currency. And depending on the game, there's different restrictions. So one example I could throw out there is Madden.
They put one out every year, Tom.
There's a specific feature called MUT. It's always just referred to as MUT. It's Madden Ultimate Team. I forgot that the M just stood for Madden again. That's what was throwing me off. But
it's all good.
You have to acquire currency either by buying it yourself with cash or by doing trials, and then currency gets you packs. Packs are how you acquire the best players available in the game. But you can sell players from your packs on a marketplace and get more coins that you can use to buy more packs, stuff like that, or buy things off of the marketplace. So that's one thing that kind of keeps that economy going, in the same way that, you talk about like selling a knife in Counter-Strike for $50.
Yep.
Whereas there are other games I mentioned before, I think in episode 1, that I play Final Fantasy Brave Exvius on the mobile. Everything in that game is tied to one user account, and there is no collective marketplace. So it's more prohibitive in a game like that where you need to spend the in-game currency to summon new characters, and you're not able to trade them with other players or sell them to other players for in-game or real life currency. So I almost feel like if you are forcing it to be a real life currency issue with your loot boxes, then maybe you need to also allow players to sell for real life currency or circulate for real life or in-game currency. And I feel like I want to tend towards real life currency there, because if you spend $50 on packs and you can't recoup at least a little bit of that cost, it's a detriment to you, the tax-paying player, really, because that's what it is. I mean, really, you're putting yourself into the game as a taxpayer at that point, and you're supporting the free players.
Here's the thing, though. You mentioned like, oh, you don't get everything unless you pay for it, in a game. I still don't think that's awful if the price is reasonable and you get it forever. If you had a game, let's say the game was free, you weren't able to do a certain group of things. Provided that you're only spending what would be a typical cost of a game to get those features, I don't think that is bad. If you take Battlefield, Star Wars Battlefield, and I don't know the exact situation, and I know most people were not supportive of it, but if the game costs $20, and I know generally speaking that the community is not for it, but if the game costs $20, let's say, and I know it probably didn't, it probably cost $70 or something ridiculous, and you only had to spend an extra $30, so $50 to invest in the game, and then you have everything all the time, it's never going away from you, then that to me is reasonable, because you're basically paying to have the whole game. You almost get it's almost like a demo at that point. I'm trying this game out. Oh, I like it. I want to be able to use, if you take a case like War of Thunder, the best plane, so I just need to spend some money to be able to get the best plane or whatever. That, I think, is totally reasonable. It keeps the game developers in business, and you also got that taste, if you will, for the game. There is obviously that whole addiction thing that, people are going to just spend the money because they just need these things, and there's definitely ways for game developers to milk the system, like you said, when it comes to limited time things like, Christmas season or Halloween or other kinds of often cosmetic or otherwise content. But as long as that kind of brings about a reasonable price for the overall game or gives you content that's new to the game, I don't think of that as a bad thing.
I agree that it's enabling access to the game and supporting the developer is valuable. Where I have trouble is in a game where there is a limited content that you have maybe, 2 weeks that you can acquire this one unit or this one item. And the only way you can acquire it is through a loot box.
At that time, you mean?
Yes, within that time window. And there's no marketplace where you can
get them
really do like an aftermarket acquisition.
I get that. I definitely get that. But at the same time, though, that's happened in Counter-Strike 2, specifically around tournaments. So they actually give out free loot boxes effectively at tournaments, which you can sell those boxes and get some money, or you can open them yourself. And those ones have stickers on them. Those stickers are signed by the players that are playing in that match at the time, which is really a great concept for the players. One, they're getting a little bit of money for doing that, and two, that makes those guns unique. So there are actually guns where it was dropped on the key round of this tournament where this player, who was the MVP of that round, saved the round, took down 3 players, or 4 players even, which is unheard of effectively at the professional scene, and there's only one of those skins out there in the world. While that sucks for the millions of other people that play it, that chance that you might get it, and the fact that in that case it was free to get, as long as game developers are looking for opportunities like that, I think that's great. That person probably could sell that gun aftermarket for thousands. I think the unique concept isn't a bad thing, provided that there's plenty of opportunities for you to get either your own unique or for you to, as you mentioned, sell that if you wanted to someone else. That's I think what's missing in you mentioned a mobile game, but in those games where you have unique items, you need to have an opportunity to get those items, or rather, for people to sell their old items. And there's no harm to the developer in that case because they've already made their money on that event that they posted. Right. So you should allow people to trade those items for that specific Christmas season. Maybe there was something really awesome or whatever. So, yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's probably going to happen more. I mean, these game developers are always going to go for the profit, right? But I think that they're going to realize, provided they can implement that feature, they're going to realize that's a very good feature, a beneficial feature for their people to have the ability to trade those items in the future.
My only concern is that there are some developers that feel reliant on the mechanic and feel reliant on the purchase. So, when you have a marketplace and the marketplace is not necessarily dollars based, that allows players to not traffic money into the game to the studio. I feel like that's the concern that some developers have with that model, and understandably so. But I also feel like that's such a linchpin of loot boxes for a player base. So it's very, I think that's the real divisive point for me.
Yeah. Mike Pinto, you've been very quiet. I think you either really don't like them or everything that you thought of has been said.
Well, we didn't pay the cost to open the Mike Pinto loot box.
Hold on.
To see if we get
Steam
one.
Wallet.
Yeah.
Okay, I drew the loot box and I got it.
All right.
I don't know. I feel like, and I'm trying to think of all the games that use a loot box system or something similar to a loot box system, and trying to compare them in my mind and think of which I find most desirable to most reprehensible, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I think one that I like, one that I find pretty reasonable is Rocket League. And I know it used to be different. I know that you would get rewards that you couldn't access, and once in a blue moon, you would get like a key that would open up one of your myriad of loot boxes. I kind of didn't like that. And they have since revamped the system. I don't know when they did it. But now, as you level up as you play, and you guys know this, you guys are both like almost 100 levels higher than I am in Rocket League. You gain items. You get, your cosmetic things, because everything in Rocket League is cosmetic, purely cosmetic. As you guys were saying, that's completely fine. So you get those items, but you also get blueprints for items that you can't access unless you pay money.
Yeah.
And I, for one, I'm like, I just like playing the game. I don't really care about the cosmetic things. I'm not going to pay the money to unlock those blueprints personally, but I also don't feel like I'm really missing out that much, because the more I play the game, the more I'm getting anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because I think that they should give out items to allow, and Counter-Strike does that too. You can get items, they're very small little things, basically like taste of the cosmetic system. That's why they put those out there. The items are incredibly common items. You're not getting the rarest or the best items in any way. And I agree, that's probably the sweet spot. I think everybody would agree. Those cosmetic things where, you're helping the developer if you get them, but you're not hurt actively by them. And I think all three of us would not like Rocket League if it was every time we played Rocket League, we're playing against a guy who spent $100 to get all the best cars, and those cars are faster, or those cars are able to hit the ball harder, or whatever. So I think we've all kind of hit the same spot, that cosmetic is great, and potentially even the ability to get, certain characters or certain things is good, provided you're able to trade them, or to not spend a ridiculous amount of money for content that, is essentially the same thing. So if you've got a game that's $20, spending an extra $30 to get everything is great. And if they put out 10 new characters and they're all $1, it's $10 more. Not too bad, provided that content's beneficial. So, yeah.
And I think Rocket League probably gets a good guy developer reward in this category for a number of reasons. One being, you generally get an item like every time you level up, if not more often than that. You have the ability to trade in items for an item of a higher rarity. So say you have 3 pigeon heads, which is a thing you can get. You can trade it in, and then you get a rarer item that's random.
Yeah.
So it still kind of follows the loot box mechanic, but requires you to give up something that you have. And at least recently, they've been doing seasonal events where you just get a seasonal currency from playing matches, which you can trade in for unique seasonal items, which do not require expenditure of money. So there's a lot of other avenues that you can go through to acquire custom content and unique skins. And there's also just a lot of player loyalty rewards in Rocket League too, which has been, I think, beneficial from like a hey, I want to make my car look cool standpoint.
Yeah.
And partnerships with other things like Rick and Morty and whatnot. So it's they've done a good job at spreading things out. If I ever wanted to spend money on a loot box, I would feel good about supporting Rocket League. I just have enough options on my own that I feel good about customizing my cars the way that I do.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's nice when you're able to participate in that part of the game, no matter what. I think that's also something that we haven't necessarily said directly, but we've thought is that, yeah, you might not have like the rarest skin. Pinto, I know you, for example, we're talking about Rocket League, you really want that T-Rex when you score a goal. You really want that animation that they have. But not having that doesn't hurt you. And who knows, maybe at some point you find a way to trade up by trading a bunch of your skins to get that. And that would make you thrilled to have, and you're not losing anything. It's just, hey, I played the game hundreds of hours in this game, and now I can get this for effectively free by giving all these other things up. So, yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think that the ability to trade your items, I think, is arguably just as important a part of this as all the other things that we talked about.
I'm going to bring up 2 different games. They're both Blizzard, and I know Blizzard's kind of like Blizzard's kind of in some hot water right now with some of the stuff they're getting into. But I think with StarCraft 2, they've done some interesting things with the war chests. You can purchase them. Fine. You can spend real-life currency. But some other things they've done is, it's just like, hey, we've got a big StarCraft tournament going on this weekend. Something like IEM, Intel Extreme Masters, where they run StarCraft 2 tournaments. I'm, of course, talking about StarCraft 2 right now, not Brood War. But they, you load up the game and it says, hey, IEM's going right now. If you tune in and watch 2 hours of IEM, we're going to give you some skins for your game. You don't have to spend anything. You could just turn on Twitch, mute it, and then we'll give you some skins. That's kind of cool. I kind of like that,
Yeah. Yeah, that happens in Counter-Strike, like I said. And I think that's cool when game developers kind of give back to their communities. It adds on to the hype of the game. I don't know if Rocket League has anything like that or any of the other ones we talked about, but that happens very often in esports games. And I think the reason why is because the eyeballs are more important than the content that they're giving out to people. One, it doesn't really cost them much. They pay a graphics designer or whatever, an animator, depending on what they're giving out, to make that model, that gun or that zealot animation, whatever, and they get extra eyeballs, and those eyeballs lead to advertising dollars. So it's not my wallet that's being hurt. Or not even being hurt, but it's not my wallet that they're pulling money out of. It's the various companies that are advertising with them, Intels and AMDs and all of them of the world. So that's really cool. I think that's probably a really, a great place for loot boxes to be because it doesn't hurt it. Now, Tom, are you okay, or do you feel comfortable with those unique to that, like that tournament or whatever items, like Pinto mentioned with IAM and I mentioned with the majors?
Yes, because I feel like if you are invested in that tournament or invested in that skin, you're going to put in the effort to get it. And that effort's relatively low, so I don't think there's any issue whatsoever with that. It's also kind of just a different, it's not like unlocking Darth Vader in Star Wars Battlefront 2. You're just getting like a team skin in a StarCraft or something like that. So I don't have any issue with that because it's not directly related to like a game mechanic. or a rare item, or even like a rare game related skin. It's really kind of like bringing some little element of the real world into the game as kind of like an Easter egg, and that's fine. I have no problem with any game doing that at any price point whenever they feel like it, really.
The other game I wanted to talk about, also a Blizzard game. We're hitting a lot of Blizzard games tonight. Overwatch, StarCraft. I'm going to go, because I haven't played this game in a long time, so I don't know how it is now. But I played Hearthstone a lot when it came out.
Ooh,
and I played back in the beta. I was laid up, like I just had surgery on my leg. So I was like, oh, this cool game's coming out. My friend came over and he was like, oh, you got to play Hearthstone. I was never much of like a card gamer in general. I never played MTG. I played Pokemon, the trading card game, a little when I was younger. But I kind of, in the beta, it was a little better because you could spend money on packs. And the way, this is probably, it's just like Magic the Gathering. If you spend money on packs, you're going to get more cards. The chances of getting rarer cards are,
like, it goes
you're
up,
gambling.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you are gambling. So if you spend, like, I believe it was $50, you got 60 packs or something like that in Hearthstone.
That sounds right, or 100 packs even, maybe. I can't remember. Yeah.
I don't remember the probability of getting a legendary card in those packs, but it was pretty low. I do remember watching Day9 stream and getting 3 legendaries in one pack, which was insane. But I never spent money on packs. But the problem is that becomes like a pay-to-win game at that point.
Yep.
If you can spend the money, sure, the odds are rough, but if you spend enough money, you're going to get those nice, big, tough legendary cards. And I know that back in the beginning of Hearthstone's history, you had players like Trump who would go on YouTube and be like, hey, I'm strictly free to play. I'm going to show you, these are all the free cards you get, and I'm going to see how far I can get using only free cards against all these people that pay. And it was rough. And you could get those cards if you played enough. There's in-game currency that builds up extremely slowly. You can break down other cards to get a different kind of currency. But to me, like, that's a bad example of loot boxes, or in this game.
If you were to play people in the same situation as you, so like let's say you don't have a lot of money or you're not fully invested in the game, so you're not, like, Hearthstone is free, you're not spending any money to get it. Right. I don't think it's the worst thing to say you're not going to be as good as someone else that's already spent money on the game. You could become as good as them through practice and also through just building up your card,
grinding cards. It out. Yeah,
grinding it out. The problem. But if you're being forced to play against a guy that has, the best legendary all the time, that's not a good system. I don't think there's a problem, though, with you playing someone who doesn't have those cards either.
Agreed.
So, full disclosure, I am a former Magic the Gathering player, which is why I did not find much interest in Hearthstone when it came out, because I was over my addiction at that point in time. But when I was younger, it was something that was played pretty frequently at the childcare center I attended. Why someone saw fit to just bring this package of crack into a childcare center and just let the children have at it, I don't know. But game shops in the town sure were happy about it.
Oh, yeah.
So I had and still have a pretty decent size, not huge, but like decent size collection of Magic the Gathering cards. And I had decks of all the different colors. I was never all that competitive, but there was a point in time where my friends and I had enough cards and we enjoyed playing the game enough that we decided we wanted to go to tournaments that were held at a comic book shop nearby. Uh-huh. And we would go, and there were 2 different types of events. So the one that I think we went to first was just a standard bring your own deck, play against people, have fun. There would be like a winner and a bracket and all that kind of stuff. We were young. We were probably like 13, 14 at most. And there were people who were like in their 30s and 40s who clearly spent a lot of money outside of just buying packs, but buying like aftermarket cards and just thinking about the logic of everything to the nth degree, they just wipe the floor with us. Like, let's be honest. Like, these are the pay to win players. They've put everything into making their quote unquote perfect deck with resources that are not available to a 13 or 14-year-old. We had no chance. It wasn't fun, and we stopped doing that pretty quickly. But there was another type of event that they had, which was called a booster draft.
Yep.
And what you would do is you would pay a certain amount of money, and there would be a certain amount of, they call them booster packs, which contain, I think, about like 15 cards. Normally like one rare, X amount of like uncommon, X amount of common. And everyone would have however many packs to start with. You open them, you look through them, you pick a certain amount of cards, and then you pass it to your right. And you would keep doing that, and you would get to take home, whatever cards you picked. But you were building a deck to use for that tournament. And it kind of was an equalizer, right? So where you have a game like that where everyone's on a level playing field with equal opportunity to get a very good card and then pass it on to the next person. There's also a strategic element of, what am I giving the next person to choose from? So I think that is arguably a more interesting and fair way to approach that sort of idea than to just have, flat out Hearthstone where it's the pay to win thing. It's the 40-year-olds wiping the floor with the 14-year-olds.
Yeah, that's a perfect, and I don't think, correct me if you guys have been. I haven't played Hearthstone in a number of years, but I thought so. They don't have that mechanic today. It would be awesome, even if they, say you don't get to bring the cards home. It'd be awesome if they had a tournament that maybe you have to pay money for to enter, maybe you don't, but you basically could enter a tournament. You could use any card that they've come out with for that tournament only, and they would have the ability to turn that card off to you after the tournament. So you could say, oh, I want to join this tournament. That lets me use the Leroy Jenkins card I know is incredibly popular, right? So I can use the Leroy Jenkins card in this tournament and try out this card, and then maybe afterwards the tournament ends, you lose the availability to that card, but say you got to 5th place with it and you loved that card and you wanted to have it, then you could go, as we talked about before, to an aftermarket. Someone that's already pulled that card and is trying to sell it for $5. Instead of opening a booster pack, you could pull for $5 that one instead of, or pay for that one instead of having to open and try to find it. I don't understand why they have not done that, Hearthstone.
That's a good point at maintaining the monetization there, too, at the end.
Yeah, because you're basically giving people taste, like we've been wanting the whole time. You get a taste of that card, you get to enjoy that card in one specific scenario, and then later on, you can get that card for just normal playing for fun.
Yeah, Madden Ultimate Teams did that a little bit in, I think, Madden 19. There was a mode,
okay,
I forget exactly what it was called, but the idea is basically it'll flash up 5 cards and you get to pick one where you would get to pick an elite receiver, an elite corner, or an elite linebacker. So you're basically doing trade-offs of these things and building your team. And the team and the cards only last for, however long you play into the knockout tournament. And then when you're done, you start over again and you would have to do the same process. And I found that much, much more fun than doing it the other way. Though I think my opinions on the matter are pretty obvious by now.
Yeah. Did you guys know that Magic the Gathering did go to an online version, right? There's an online version of it now. Have you guys played that at all? And have you seen if... Okay, yeah.
Crack free since '93, my friend.
Yeah, I haven't played Magic in a long time. I knew where you were going with that booster pack thing, though. You mentioned, yeah. I don't know if they do those tournaments, but honestly, any card-based game, and those are 2 of the most popular that I'm aware of. One of them should be doing that if they're not doing it right now. It's a perfect kind of idea to give you, a way of getting people to ultimately open more packs anyway. So they should be doing that if they're not. I can't believe they wouldn't be. But cool. Yeah,
if Hearthstone starts up a booster draft format, I think we should take credit and demand royalties.
Yeah. Well, I always get these crazy ideas when we're talking about games where I'm like, oh, why has a game developer not done that? I should do it. And then I realize that I can't develop a game by
And
myself.
then we realize we know nothing about game development.
I mean, I know kind of what they do, but I don't know how they spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. Some AAAs are hundreds of millions of dollars often to develop these games, and those people that are there have a very unique set of skills, and they can really put out some great games. So yeah, cool discussion, guys. I think that loot boxes I don't think are ever going away personally, and I think that we're going to continue to see games try to come out with them. I just hope that I think we're going to hit a point of fatigue with it, but I think that it's a way to reduce the initial purchase cost of games. And I know personally I would not go and spend hundreds of dollars on anything, or rather $100 on a game for anything but like a AAA game. These games that we talked about are arguably not AAA, and those kind of games need a way to get people enticed to join them. So, good discussion. I think we came to a pretty happy consensus, and probably the community consensus as a whole.
I think we all kind of arrived at the same conclusion that for cosmetics, totally go for it. It's fine. But if it's something where it's going to alter gameplay or especially a competitive landscape, that's a no-no.
Or at least it's a no-no in the case of you having to play those people and losing because you just didn't put as much money into it. If you're playing the same people that put equal amount of dollars or have the equal number of cards, that I think
like a how much money have you spent bracket where you get placed into where you play.
It's a player level based on cost.
In the case of cards, if you've got your deck should be almost classed based on its quality. So if you have every single card in the game and you're going in with perfect legends, the best possible deck out there, you should be like a class A, and you should only play people in class A, maybe class B, or if there's like an S class or something.
But what about skill? You're not taking into it. I'm sorry.
It's just like some people are like, oh, I paid, so I should be able to beat this guy. It's like, no, that's not how a competitive game where you're playing against someone else and only one of you can be the winner should be. So, yeah, but I think we ultimately came to a pretty close consensus on that. And cosmetic, I think we're all on board for, because we know the value there that it brings to those developers.
As long as you're not charging $5,000 for some sort of skin or something.
Hey man, I believe the most valuable, I mentioned the Counter-Strike skin, I'm pretty sure the most valuable AWP that was signed by a specific player who I believe no longer plays anymore or had a moment in a tournament that will probably never happen again. I think that went for something like $12,000. Who has the money? I don't know, but
here's the question: is that the developer selling it for $12,000, or is that the market selling it for $12,000?
That's the market, because there's only one of those in the world.
That I'm okay with.
Yeah, that great for that guy, right?
Yeah, great.
You can go get a nice used car instead of having an AWP skin.
I wish I had a $12,000 bit of code that I could sell to someone.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Alrighty, well, cool.
I think this was going to be a one-topic
episode. What a topic, guys. Whew, we really did a deep dive into that one.
Oh, I think we knew we had something big there, so...
Yeah, well, that's why last episode we saw...
That's why we didn't do it last week.
Yeah, great topic. Well, anyway, I guess we're going to be wrapping it up here. Appreciate everybody for listening again. Catch us next Thursday or whenever these podcasts are posted. Check out our YouTube channel, JoyPad. You can find it on YouTube there. We're posting these podcasts there, as well as Pinto at this point is doing some Let's Plays, and maybe some other ones of us will join him or create our own. So appreciate it, and thanks for listening.
Shut up, past Mike, because here's future Mike to plug those social media channels that you were talking about. I also got a new mic in between the time that this first episode was recorded and when I'm recording these plugs, so sorry for the disparity in sound quality. Anyways, social media channels are super easy. Just search for JoyPad Pod everywhere. So if you want us on Facebook, you can find JoyPad Pod. If you want us on Instagram, just search for JoyPad Pod. And if you want us on Twitter, I believe we're JoyPad Pod 1, but our handle is @JoyPadPod. Anyways, back to the past.
Bye, everybody.
And hopefully next week Megan will be back.
Oh yes, hopefully the regular
Ideally.
Megan will be back, and we've talked about bringing some other people on too, potentially in the future. So, yeah, we'll have a couple new topics next week. See you guys then.
Bye.
Bye. Oh yeah.